We are going to listen to this young man, but we're going to try and run through it as rapidly as possible, but also to be as thorough as possible, because we do have a city commission meeting starting in about an hour, and we have not yet started with this young man. And his name is Casey Kelly. Mr. Kelly, would you please be sworn in?
Mr. Kelly, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, the whole truth, God?
Yeah, before he begins, I would just like to offer 2 items of evidence as the next exhibit. One is a book all about radiation, which was discussed this morning, a copy of which the Commission looked at, by a nuclear physicist and a medical doctor, which has been purchased within the last 24 hours from the Fort Harrison and Scientology buildings here in Clearwater. And the next is the book Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, which will be offered as evidence at this point, and the purpose for which I will state it another time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kelly, I'd like to ask you the 5 standard questions that I'm asking every witness before they testify. And number 1 is, are you appearing here today and testifying under oath voluntarily?
Yes.
Number 2, have you been paid by anyone for your testimony other than expenses for coming to Clearwater?
No.
Number 3, do you have a lawsuit against the Church of Scientology?
Not at this time.
Number 4, does the Church of Scientology have a lawsuit against you?
Hope not. No, they don't.
I hope not, too. 5, has anyone suggested to you that you should state anything but the truth, or has anyone suggested that you change your testimony for any reason?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, you have an outline. I'd like you to follow it and then get into it in your own words as you would, sir.
All right. Let me first say I am terrified. I have never spoken in public in my life.
Well, calm down. We're
Take your time.
take your time.
Let me thumb through a little bit.
We can ask you questions if you'd prefer.
Let me
Try to get started.
let me go in on some of the background information here. I joined the Sea Org in March of 1977 when I was going to Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. I was 18 at the time. I got to the Flag Land Base.
Excuse me, can you speak a little louder? I don't think they can hear you. I hear the puzzled look on their face.
Okay. I got to the Flag Land Base the day after Christmas, 1977, and left here in October of 1980. I'm currently enlisted in the United States Navy. I had several jobs when I was here in Clearwater. My main one was a job title called Technical Arrivals Data in Charge, which is kind of a lofty title, which meant I'll go into it later. I have no knowledge of any criminal activity in the Clearwater area, or any other area, actually. Into some of the things that I was doing as a job. When I was the technical arrivals data person.
Excuse me, did you say you had no knowledge or new knowledge?
No knowledge.
No knowledge.
No knowledge. None.
Would you give that title again, please, Mr. Kelly?
Technical arrivals data in charge.
Thank you.
One of the things they tend to do is pay you with a title.
Like a bank.
My job was, I kept an accounts record for every person that was on public lines at Flag, which is somewhere around 5,000 names. I would go to Treasury and go through every invoice that was written, and I had an accurate list of people who had made an advance payment to the Flag Land Base. And the reason I did that was we would find out who had paid fully for a service, and then our office would call them to get them to show up at Clearwater to do that service. Because, especially with Scientologists, there's a lot of people that can afford to pay for these services, but don't have the time to show up. So what we would do is our office would call them to try to get them to show up earlier than they had anticipated, or just to get them to show up. I personally booked a lot of flights for these guys. Then after they'd showed up, then we could deliver the service and then sell them more. you can't sell them anymore if they haven't done what they've already paid for. We also use this list to sell books, because they used to pay a percentage of the book sale to the staff member that sold the book. So, and there were some people making a vast amount of money selling books. Comparatively, I can go into that later. I was familiar with the ways that they got their money into the Clearwater organization, though I wasn't directly involved with it because I was in disagreement with the way they made some of their money, with high-pressure sales techniques that they used. I never, and I still don't, I never could tolerate that, the way they, boy, you've done this service and got to do the next one, you know, and people having to sell things and mortgage things seemingly against their will, or with reservations is the word I was looking for. With reservations, not really wanting to, but knowing that because Scientology is such a good thing, that that's the thing that they should do next. Anyway, one of the ways that the Clearwater Church makes money is they have 3 tours out, and almost all the time, they call it regging, making money. There's 3 tours out, mostly all the time. There's one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and one in Europe. And they'll go from one city, be there for a week, week and a half, 2 weeks, and then go to the next one. And they make a lot of money that way, especially in Europe. They make a lot of money in Europe. Seeing how I'm talking about money, we'll go down to that. The highest single week gross income that we made when I was here was $2.3 million. And that's tax-free.
Tax-free.
Well, we know all about
you know about the tax-free, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I'm possibly here. That was a good week. I would guess that the average weekly gross income while I was there, or at least while I was on this TAD post, was anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000. I don't know where all that money went. The people that do don't tell. It goes to what's called Sea Org reserves, which is kind of a...
who knows?
The people that are on the Sea Org reserves committee. And that's a very few elite people. Those guys are people that have been in Scientology for a long time, usually. And they're pretty cloak and dagger about it. They don't... they play their cards pretty close to their chest, as it were. In 1980, when Scientology worldwide bought a whole bunch of buildings around the world, they bought somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million worth of buildings around the world, and they paid cash for all of them. Those were all, they just wrote checks for them. They didn't rent anything. Because there was no point in renting something, because that was just money down the tube, so they believed in buying it. The person that was in charge of the Sea Org reserves, the SOR chief, came to the Flag Service Organization, which is, you know, across the street, to one of our staff meetings one Friday night, and he talked to us about it, because the flagship organization, which is, or the Flag Service Organization, is the organization here at Clearwater that delivers the services. They're the ones that do the auditing for the public people. And they sell the services. They make a majority of the money. Worldwide, they make the majority of the money. He came to one of our staff meetings, and this is a quote. Mr. Tinklenberg said, all these buildings that we bought made a dent in the reserves. The key word there is dent. He said it made a dent in the reserves. He didn't tell us, I mean, a dent could be 2% to 75%. He didn't say the exact percentage of the dent. $25 million, I would think. I don't know. I don't know how much was in the reserves. He wouldn't tell us. One of the other things that I found rather interesting is they don't keep more than $40,000 in any one bank in the Pinellas County area, or in the Bay Area. They use banks in Tampa. So consequently, I know that they have, I would guess, at least 30 bank accounts around the area. Because I've seen the Treasury offices, and they've got a stack of checkbooks, you know, that are a stack of checkbooks is high. And then, you know, for example, the Clearwater Bank account would be used for, say, tours, and the Barnett Bank down the street would be used for Div 6 phones, for example. They have it broken up so that it's easier to keep track of where that money's going. When I was in the FSO, we used to get a stat sheet out. We used to get a stat sheet from the Flag Bureau, which is a management organization in the West Coast building. And they manage all Scientology organizations worldwide. And they publish their statistics. And usually, the organization in Clearwater's income was equal to that to the rest of the world put together. All Scientology organizations put together would usually fall short of this place. And that is a lot of money. That's a lot of other Scientology organizations also. I don't know how many there are, but there's a bunch of them, including the big ones in Los Angeles. And our gross income here, quite often, was more. Hop down here to some of my knowledge about Guardian's office. In early '78, I chuckle about this now. I was in charge of religious image, and they had a religious image checklist that I was supposed to follow and to help get in, to help to upgrade the religious image of our buildings and our personnel around Clearwater. I was working for the Assistant Guardian for Public Relations, who at that time was Ms. Nancy Wrightson, who I know you're familiar with.
Yes, I remember Nancy Wrightson.
A couple of things that I was supposed to do was get certificates, minister certificates. You know, Larry Lattimore, minister, that sort of thing, up where people could see them if they wandered into the Clearwater or any one of the buildings. You know, they'd see someone's minister cert sitting there. Or crosses. I was also supposed to build those 8-pointed crosses, which is next to impossible. I was also supposed to talk to our staff members and public about upgrading their image around town, you know, and it's kind of hard to tell some of these people, hey, you know, your jeans have frazzles on them, you know, and I felt it's kind of a wishy-washy job, and I wasn't real enthused about it. Because I didn't have the power. I was working as a minor staff member trying to do a major job. My God, that was a full-time job. And I did maybe a couple hours a week. I'd go around, do my checklist, find out where everything was not the way it was supposed to be, basically. And Ms. Wright used to jump on me about it, but what could I do? It wasn't my job. Anyway, one of the things, we used to have Guardian's office briefings fairly frequently, especially when things were getting hot with Mr. Tenney and his band of renown. When he was raising such a fuss here, we used to get these briefings from the Guardian's office, and they were usually pretty interesting. They'd always make it sound like we were winning. And one of the things that I remember was that when they had the Jonestown tragedy in Guyana, I wasn't really aware of what was going on down there. I didn't know that it was a religious cult, because when you say cult to a Scientologist, he automatically turns you off, thinking that you don't know what you're talking about, or thinking that you're anti-Scientology as soon as you say the word cult. Religious cult, dangerous cult, whatever. So one of the things that they told us was that you got to keep in touch with your families during this Guyana thing, because they're going to get all concerned about you being in a religious cult. They told us to keep writing those good roads, fair weather letters. Whenever you have trouble at home, you're supposed to write on me, dear Mom, you know, things are fine, weather is beautiful, you know, getting a tan, you know, I went to Disney World last week. You know, you're not supposed to mention that the city of Clearwater is about ready to burn your building down. It was, you weren't supposed to tell them about the bad things, or the bad news. You were supposed to just give them good roads, fair weather, just wishy-washy, ho-hum letters, which most people can see right through. Since I've gotten out, my family has told me that when they'd get these letters, they knew that wasn't me. It seemed a little fakey to them. Anyway, there's a little thing on my outline about marriage and legal discretions thereof. I don't know if you want me to go into that or not. Is it pertinent?
If the attorney, Mr. Flynn, thinks it's pertinent, we can go into it.
All right. Okay, I don't know about this. Okay, gang. I was married on March 6th, 79. My wife and I had obtained a marriage license and done a blood test here in Clearwater. We were married by a friend of mine in my office who is a minister. We were both ministers at the time, too, but that isn't pertinent. We were married by a Scientology minister. A couple months later, we had second thoughts about the marriage. No, it's not apropos here. The minister said, Reverend Hal, he said, well, you don't have to worry about a divorce because I never sent your marriage certificate in. He said, I wanted to save you some trouble in case it popped up. I said, hey, no sweat, great. You know.
Does your wife know she's no longer married?
Yes.
No, that's better.
Yes.
That's why it's significant, Mayor, but there still may be a legal issue, and there may be a situation where neither party is exactly certain of the illegal rights at this point, as to whether they are married or divorced. The city may have been allowing a minister of the church to issue a marriage license that's not recorded, and both parties may now feel that they are married or divorced, and the matter is in limbo.
Well, I hope not, because she's remarried.
How do you know that?
I hope she's not a bigamist.
I'm going to.
Anyway, let's get back to reality.
Okay.
You are no longer married as far as you know.
Anyway,
And you're
the
neither
reason
your
we
wife.
that we felt that was significant was that I don't think I was the only person to do that.
You mean get married by the Scientology?
Oh, there's tons of those. I mean, there's... Because people see there's that no premarital sex law that they have, which is... some of us had a little trouble adjusting to that. And... but we just still follow it. So consequently, there's a lot of rapid marriages, short courtships, and which I could, you know, you wouldn't believe me. No, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But and consequently, there's a lot of short marriages over there. But they're married by Scientologists, and their divorces are usually uncontested, at least among staff members. Anyway, let's wander off here to living conditions. I lived at all 3 buildings that staff members live in while here. I lived at the Fort Harrison, at the Heart of Clearwater, and at the Quality Inn. Most of that time I spent in rooms with 10 to 12 people in them. Regular hotel rooms. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Usually average about 8 to 10, because I had many different rooms. People would move often. When I first came on staff here, they had what's called the men's dorm. You won't believe this. We had 54 bunks in that room.
In one room?
It wasn't a hotel room. It was a little bigger than that. It was in the old locker room of the old Jack Tar Hotel. It was downstairs.
Yeah.
And obviously there wasn't a whole lot of room to move around down there. But it was definitely... It was 54 bunks, and I'm trying to remember if we had any vacancies. There was probably 48 men living in there at the time. I lived there for 6 months. That wasn't a real pleasant place. It was pretty crowded. That's all I have for my statement.
Okay, you mentioned that the money as high as $2.3 million, average $400,000 to $500,000 a week.
That's correct.
And the Sea Org took the money. And do you know their names, the Sea Org people?
I know the post titles, a couple of them. One of them was the SOR chief, and boy, I'm trying to remember. I know who was in on it. How's that? One of them was the director of records, assets, and materiel. His name was Homer Schomer.
Homer Schomer?
Homer Schomer. Nice old Jewish man, Homer Schomer. And
Well, we don't have to get into what nationality is.
Right, well,
religion.
It's another story. Anyway, Homer knew what was going on with SOR, but like I say, these guys played it pretty close to their chest. He mentioned to me one time about investing it in possibly gold or gems of some kind, but he definitely did not go into specifics. This is when gold was going for, what, $800 an ounce or something, and there was speculation on what they should invest some of this money in. They also mentioned something about property. But this was just in passing. I used to hang out in his office a lot, digging through invoices and things. So, but he didn't say that we bought 14 pounds of gold. But he said SOR was considering it, the SOR committee. One of the other posts that was in charge, that was in on that SOR was the, I can't remember the exact title. It was a person that was in charge of all treasury departments worldwide. There's a person over in the West Coast buildings. Most Scientology organizations have 7 divisions around the world. Most of them have 7. There's a person at Flag that's in charge of all those, of each of them. Like this person, Treasury, there's a person that's in charge of Treasury Division, Division 3. And she was in on it. She was in charge of all finances worldwide.
Do you think all that money went back to Los Angeles that was collected in Clearwater? Or was it spread to do good work in the city of Clearwater?
I don't know exactly
You don't know where the money went. You just know you collected.
Right.
So
I know where some of it didn't go.
Do you want to tell me where it didn't go?
One of the places it didn't go was for meals for the crew, food. And it's not like we were fed, but it was often low quality, especially for the amount of money we were making. Like, heavens, we were making. Say we had a bad week, we made $400,000. The expenses aren't going to come near that.
Well, did you also get fed beans and rice?
On one occasion, for a week, we did, which was an interesting story.
Was that a bad week?
We had a really crummy week that week. Ms. DeBerna had mentioned something about that. What had happened was we had a person that was a treasury secretary for the flagship organization who was a little off his rocker. And what he was doing, basically, was making up money. He was reporting money that hadn't actually been turned in. And so the organization thought it had this amount of money to spend when, in fact, it was down here, right? And this guy was, he was the big cheese. Boy, he was the new kid on the block. He was the boy wonder because he was making all this money. No one actually saw it, but here he was making all this money. And our gross income was over the $500,000 mark, which at that time was the highest ever. It was just phenomenal. And most of us from this one guy from his department, and it was just great. Boy, we were all enthused about it. And then we found out this guy was, he was like, he didn't have all stuff in one bag, and they put him in the RPF.
Yeah.
Immediately belongs in the RPF.
Right. The guy was nuts because he was reporting money that he didn't have. And
is that Homer Schmomer?
No. No, let's not make Homer jokes. What happened was we got a telex from Ron, from LRH, that said, "You thought you could make $500,000, so do it." And that is a quote. You have by the end of next week to do it. You'd better get your honest GI up to $500,000, or you're going on beans and rice. And our honest GI at the time was around 300, 350.
What is an honest GI?
That's what we were really making before David, what's-his-face, was falsely reporting statistics. Yeah. So, well, we didn't make it. We didn't make the $500,000 by the deadline. So we went on beans and rice. I remember that. It was on my birthday, 1978. Now I remember, because everybody else was eating beans and rice, and I had cake. That's right. It was October 13th, 78.
To take in $400,000 or $500,000 a month and have beans and rice?
That's a week.
A week? A week rather? Didn't that get you thinking? They could at least afford to give me a hamburger or a steak or a lobster or something for that.
I wasn't real pleased with it, but it was, and I really felt it was unfair to punish the whole staff because one guy was a little off. You know, I never have believed in punishing everybody for one person's messing up. But I was pretty well indoctrinated then, and that was when I was new on staff, and I wasn't. I had gotten disenchanted later on, so this was when I was new and I was still dedicated. I think I ate at McDonald's that week.
Yeah, what were you paid?
At that time, when I first came on staff, I was paid $8.60 a week.
80?
$8.
$8?
$8.60. $8.60. That was for the first, oh boy, long time, year and a half. Until I became a full-fledged staff member, and then it went up to $17.20.
Well, how did you live? I mean, you might have had to buy personal things. You had to buy toothpaste.
My main vice was pipe tobacco. You just spread your money very thin. That's all you buy is your personal things. You don't go out. You not, you know.
You don't go to a restaurant very often.
Couldn't even go to McDonald's very often, right?
No, you couldn't go to McDonald's at all during that time. Even when you're making a whole $17.20, it's kind of rough to go. You know, say you go into the galley or into the you eat lunch. If you didn't like it, you know, you had whatever it was, and you weren't enthused about that meal. You didn't go to McDonald's too often. You know, which is kind of, that's one of the main reasons I got out. Was here I was working 70 to 80 hours a week, and I'm making $20. You know, this does not jive. You know, it just didn't add up.
Good thinking.
Hmm?
Good thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. It took a while. It took
Don't
me
get
3
them
years
nervous,
to figure
ladies
that
and
out.
gentlemen. Okay. So that gave you your first clue at 70, 80 hours a week for $20, and you got disillusioned then.
Right.
Most of the people that I see walking down the street look about your age. Are they existing on family money or?
Very few. There's a few people that have family money, and those are the people you see driving down the street.
Driving.
I'm sorry. I tend to make things sound funny when I'm tense. I'm sorry, but I don't want to make this sound any more serious than it is, because it's very serious. The people who have, most of the people, the staff members that do drive cars, have family money. David Ziff drives a Jaguar. He has lots of family money.
Well,
yes.
when you're living in 55 men to a room, to an old locker room, didn't you question that could be cause disease or spread of disease or an epidemic or
kept it
social problems or
we kept
one
it
bathroom? And
spotless. We kept that thing spotless. We really did. We did keep it clean. We kept it very clean, as a matter of fact. So there wasn't too much threat of that.
There's one question I'd like to ask you. I don't know if you can answer me. You may be the wrong witness to ask this, but no one's asked it yet. Why Clearwater? And why did you come in under the United Churches of Florida? Why not what you really were?
Because I doubt if you would have sold us the building.
Well, I didn't have anything to do with selling the building.
Well, I wasn't here either.
Yeah.
I doubt if they would. That was the reason that I heard, was that it's just speculation on my part, or from things that I've heard from people that were here at that time that said they couldn't have bought the building, or they would have raised the price of the building, of the Fort Harrison. They would have found out who it was.
But they just decided Clearwater was a nice little town they could take over?
It had a big, cheap hotel. Was another.
A big, cheap hotel.
It was another part of the. That's my wording, obviously. Because the Fort Harrison was, to my knowledge, was rather run down when they bought it in '75. It was on a. It was a buy at the price. I don't remember what it was. It was $2 million or something.
I think 2.5.
2.5.
Right.
Well, I was in there, of course, not recently, but when it was the old hotel, and I remember the rooms as being very small, old salesman-type hotels with little tiny beds, if you remember, that type of room. And I don't know how you can fit 2 people in that room would be a crowd. Now, anyone could fit 8 or 10 in those little tiny, old-timey salesman-type hotel rooms. It's got to be, something's got to be wrong someplace, or it's got to be a health hazard, or It's got to cause all kinds of other conditions.
I just got off a naval ship, and they're pretty similar as far as size in the berthing areas go.
But they're not taking in $400,000 or $500,000 a week either.
Right.
Okay, I could go on, but I'm going to yield now to regging hours.
Regging tours?
Regging tours and how they channel business back to Clearwater. What is this all about, the regging tours?
Regging.
Regging.
It's a registrar. A registrar is a person that takes in money. Tells a person how much he needs this service, and then gets him to give him a check for the service. Like I said, they've got 3 regging tours that are out around the world, just regging up money for the Clearwater operation.
How do you get to be a reggie?
A registrar.
That looks like the best job. I mean, do you need a degree in
Those
finance?
guys make good money. They make good bonuses.
Are they paid commission?
Yes. Not on the... Or are they? They're paid commissions on books.
So this $400,000 to $500,000 to $1 million or 2.3, did anybody get a cut on that?
Or a bonus.
Or a bonus, like a commission?
Oh, certainly. That week, everybody got a bonus. Everybody got, like, I think it was $150. Everybody got a decent bonus on that week.
Even you?
Even me. Everyone did. I know one person that sold $1.1 million worth of books to one guy.
To one man?
In Europe. And he got, I believe it was 5%, which is 50 grand commission.
Was it a library? Or?
Yes, it was a whole bunch of books. He was starting this gentleman in, I think it was Lucerne, Switzerland, was starting a chain of missions there. And he bought, in a lump sum, he had old European family money. Walter Hegetschweiler. No one on earth will ever be able to spell
Walter
that.
Hegetschweiler?
Yes.
Hegetschweiler.
Yes, I can spell it if you want me to.
Spell it, please.
I think I'm the only person in flag that ever could. Hegetschweiler.
Good for you.
Okay, all right, I know we're getting down to the end, ladies and gentlemen, but let's just be nice and act like good gentlemen and gentle ladies.
No.
We don't want to make this a farce. So this
No.
is serious. I know you're a good, entertaining witness, but this is not a farce. This is serious, and we don't want to be criticized for ridiculing another
Mr. Hager.
man or woman's organization.
One thing I was told to mention was that was the bonus. Some people were paid bonuses in paper, say.
Like script?
No, their account would be credited.
So they could take another course.
Right. And so,
No.
and on this particular occasion, I believe that was made in cash, or a check was written. The gentleman that sold the course, those books to Mr. Hegetschweiler, bought his auditing at that time. And the staff member doesn't normally have to buy auditing. He never has to. But rather than wait around to get his Ned Frote's auditing, he just paid for it. Which was... I thought it was kind of foolish myself, because a man that does that amount of business for the church, he would eventually be awarded that auditing for nothing. But he turned right around and spent $40,000 of it for his auditing.
Okay. Mr. Burfield, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Just a couple. Mr. Kelly, do you mind if I call you Casey?
No, fine.
I'm still not sure why or how did you happen to get involved in Scientology?
I was going to Portland State University in Portland, Oregon.
Did you take any of their auditing courses or anything like
I've
that?
never paid for one. Since after I became on staff, did a bunch of it.
In taking those, have you reviewed any of those books since you've taken the course?
No, I haven't. I haven't been too enthused about hearing anything about Scientology since I got out in October of last year.
You're no longer
Before that.
associated with it. Why did you leave Scientology?
I left. The original reason I left Clearwater was to go on vacation. And when I got on vacation, my brother had contacted some people about Scientology and done his research on what was actually going on. And he just kind of verbally, he asked me what I was doing in a rather point-blank way. And I went, well, why are you working these hours for this amount of money, and where does this money go? And I went, geez, I don't know. And I started thinking about it on my own, and that's how I got out. I just never returned from my vacation.
The job that you were in, was that more of a financial management type of job?
The job is actually located in the executive division. I spent a lot of time in Treasury. I saw every invoice that came in, all of them. John DeVolt, I don't want to name celebrity names, but I saw everybody's invoice. Did everyone add them onto my list?
Did everyone pay cash for their services, or
check? Mostly check.
Was there any promissory notes or anything like that?
No, you couldn't do that.
Couldn't do that?
No, you had to have the money on hand.
So you had no collection problems as far as getting money?
The only time we'd have collection problems would be, say, a person bought some auditing. He did the auditing, but it was the middle of an auditing action, and he needed more, or else there could be dire consequences for the individual. Say there was a possibility he might get ill, whatever. Then he would go in debt to the organization and get either review auditing or whatever it was that was needed. And that sometimes got pretty expensive. That's the only time a public person would owe the organization.
Do you know how they collected that money?
Certainly do. I used to work in the office when it was done. They would call them or write them letters, or basically a lot the same way that they get regular money in, except it seemed to be a little nastier.
How so?
Well, in that you owe us money.
Did you get that from even your visa? I mean, there was no force or coercion to collect this money?
None that I ever saw. They sometimes got, none that I ever saw.
Did you ever see any kind of a working budget? In other words, when you took in $400,000 a week, it cost $150,000 or $200,000 to run the hotel?
A working budget. Every week the financial planning for that week would be posted.
What would that be?
That would be like how much money was spent for phone calls. Well, each division, how much money they had allocated to them. For example, our office had spent $2,500 a week on phone bills. That's how much we were allocated. We spent more than that.
But did you see this for the whole operation?
Oh, yes. But I can't remember too much for specifics, I'm sorry, because it was just numbers on a piece of paper, and if it didn't concern my office, I really wasn't paying that much attention.
So, in other words, on the poor week when they got the $400,000, you don't know whether the operating budget was $120,000 or...
No. I know that on a poor week, it was tougher to get something out of it was like getting blood from a turnip to get money out of the financial planning committee. I know that. For example, I used my boss's typewriter. It was his own personal electric typewriter, and I tried to get the organization to rent one for me so I could give him back his. And no amount of requests would give me a typewriter, you know. It seemed to me to be a bit off, you know, because our office was doing an outstanding job, and yet we still couldn't get a typewriter. You know, it was hard to get money from the organization.
Question, when you mentioned these living conditions similar to the military, did you ever have any kind of an inspection or what happened in situations like that?
Well, it's like Lori said, you would know when they were coming, and there'd be a giant press to clean that place up a lot. You know, you make sure all the dormitories were all clean and neat and that sort of thing.
But do you know if they moved beds or anything in there?
The only thing I can remember on that sort of deal was when a young man which doesn't really have to do with fire inspectors, it has to do with moving a person. I remember when Charles Fletcher had trouble with his parents here in Clearwater. That was a big deal here in the city. I remember the mayor was in on it or somebody. It was a big deal. His parents came down and tried to get him out of here. Well, he was living in the men's dorm at the time, down there with 47 other people. And they moved him up to a regular public room for the day. Put him and one other person in a regular room. Moved a bunch of books and made it lived in. So when his parents came to visit him, he had a regular room with just one other person, when in actual fact he lived downstairs with the rest of us.
Just a question of curiosity here. To this day, you do not know whether you're divorced or...
I consider myself to be. I mean, the marriage certificate no longer, it didn't get sent in.
You know that for a fact?
Yes, because I chopped it up with a pair of scissors.
Good way. What happens on these other marriages that are performed? Do they go through the legal steps of getting divorces if there are divorces?
If they get, as far as I know, they do. See, that's bad news. You don't talk about bad news between yourselves. You know, I have several friends who got divorced while I was there, and that was bad news, so we didn't discuss it.
Just one final question. I'm still not clear in my mind what would motivate you to come down here on Liberty to talk to us.
Chance to get back
Back
at Scientology, because I feel like I got the short end of the stick on those 3 years. And I feel I have something to say, you know, because I had some feelings. You know, I worked there for 3 years. I felt that I had some testimony that would be of value to the commission.
Or do you feel this trip is more a vindictive trip than it is one of the informative one? Or
No, it's because I haven't, you know, I haven't gotten terribly emotional about the whole thing, or I don't feel like I'm going to go bomb, you know, like I'm going to go call in bomb threats or anything like that. I don't feel vindictive in the emotional way. But Scientology is something that I feel most people don't know about what really goes on over here at the Fort Harrison. And I knew.
Do you think that should be of deep concern to this commission and the people in Clearwater?
I definitely do.
Why?
Because they're doing things that I feel are unethical.
Example.
$20 a week for 70 hours seems a bit one-sided to me. Things of that nature. If the, I don't know about these people that are in the rehabilitation project for us, things of that nature. These things should be found out about, because I don't think the people of Clearwater know what's really going on. They put up a good front over there.
Can you tell us any other things that we should know about, or in your opinion we should be wondering? You think that health is a factor over there?
I know that I had blood poisoning a couple times, but I don't know if that's still a problem now or not.
What about the safety of the people?
Food poisoning, I'm sorry, food poisoning. Pardon?
Safety of the people.
I don't think they're in any great physical danger.
Do you think you could have evacuated that room with 50-some fellows if you had a fire?
Yes, because we did it a couple of times. 2 nights in a row they had fire alarms that went off.
Do you think in your own mind that there's been any, in the distribution of literature here in Clearwater, any defrauding of their misrepresentation to the people of Clearwater?
I'm not that familiar with what information has been dispensed to the people of Clearwater.
In the form of books, literature that they may have sold.
I always felt the literature was pretty wishy-washy, that it was just on the nature to appease the citizens of Clearwater. See, Scientology, this operation does not, they really don't want anything to do with the citizens of Clearwater. The people they're concerned with are people that are already Scientologists. That's who they're interested in. If this was a regular Scientology organization, they'd be trying to get the people of Clearwater into that building. As it is, they just soon, Clearwater left them alone. That was always the feeling we had when I was there. Is that, but if you must come in, you know, we'll be cordial and show you the chapel and that sort of thing. But their main interest lies in public, in people that are already Scientologists.
Do you think that the health codes over there really have been violated?
I'm not that familiar with health codes, and I know when I was in the dormitory down there, that was probably a violation, but that's no longer in existence, I would guess.
You've made a general statement that the people of Clearwater should know about it. If you had some pronouncement, what would you tell the people of Clearwater?
If I was a citizen of Clearwater, I wouldn't want them in my town. because it's a dangerous organization.
Dangerous in what respect?
Dangerous to the minds of young people.
Do you think they have effect on my children in that they live here, or just the ones coming in?
I really don't feel like they pose that much of a threat to the city of Clearwater, because they really don't want anything to do with Clearwater. They really don't want to deal with the people in Clearwater, but if it's looked upon favorably here, maybe it'll be looked upon favorably elsewhere. You see, and I don't think it should be looked upon favorably in the slightest at all.
Whether it be Clearwater or Los Angeles?
Anywhere.
But if I understand your statement, you would just alert the people of Clearwater that they are a dangerous organization.
But in my opinion, they are. In my opinion, they are.
You would or would not recommend anybody going into Scientology?
I would recommend against it with all my heart and soul.
Going into it?
Getting out of it. That's another thing that I would like known. The average Scientologist doesn't know about some of these doesn't know about any of these clandestine activities that I don't know if anyone has testified on yet or not, but some of the harassment of former Mayor Cesaris or the St. Petersburg Times writers. They hear about that stuff, of these harassment, of wiretaps and things, and a Scientologist doesn't believe it. They figure that's just noise to sell papers, when in fact it's actually occurring. The average Scientologist you see walking down the street, it probably isn't a bad person. But
your statement, you would just alert the people of Clearwater that they are a dangerous organization.
But in my opinion, in fact, it's actually occurring. The average Scientologist you see walking down the street, it probably isn't a bad person, but he's misled by the organization, by the policies of the organization.
Well, and now you say that they're misled. Do you know these to be a fact?
Yes.
Can you give us a for instance?
The only for instance I can give is an incident that happened to me in my home after I got out of Scientology, an incident of harassment, which I don't know if that's apropos to these proceedings.
That's very pertinent.
When I was on leave, well, before I went on leave to Portland, or to Vancouver, Washington, where my brother lives, my brother had called everyone from the FBI and CIA on down to find out about Scientology. Because he kind of knew it wasn't all what it was cracked up to be, but he didn't really know what to do about it. And so he called a lot of people, a bunch of people, until he got in contact with someone that knew something about religious cults or cult activities. So when I came home, he had a stack, he had stacked papers in there of affidavits and things like that, and he proceeded to ask me a few questions, to which I didn't have logical answers for. So I got out. I decided to stay home. The day after that, Bob and I, we went to a business meeting in Seattle and left his wife at home alone. We came back and found her sitting in the closet with a gun in her hand, terrified. What had happened was, this was the day after Halloween, '80. Someone who came to the door wearing a Halloween mask, knocked on the door. There was a screen door. She opened up the door. They asked if Casey Kelly was there. She said no and started to close the door on these people. They came into the house, harassed her, exposed themselves, threatened her, saying that you better leave Casey alone or it's going to get worse. Don't call the cops, that sort of thing. No one else in that area knew I was there. I had no friends, because I hadn't been there for 3 years. I had no friends in that area that would do something, off the wall like that. My family didn't even know I was there, with the exception of my brother. He was the only one that knew I was at his home. That made it very real to me. That made it kind of hit home. And the average Scientologist does not know about that sort of thing taking place. How can a religion do that? If it's a bona fide religion.
Well, we don't want to...
That's another...
That's in the religious
I'm sorry.
beliefs, and
I'm sorry.
we don't want to get
Mayor,
ourselves in a
I
jam
could go
there.
on all evening, but I think...
So could I, but I think we better switch around, and we do have a meeting, another meeting to attend at 25 to 5, at 5, but I have to go back to my colleagues to the right to see if they have something they'd like to add, too.
I have a lot of questions to ask, but I think we need to adjourn. Start in the morning.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion, sir?
Can you say over Mr. Kelly?
Yes, I can.
All right, why don't you stay over then and speak with Mr. Flynn? There may be something we want to ask you again, but
I have a lot of questions.
in this case, ladies and gentlemen, this particular meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene the regular scheduled city commission meeting as soon as we can.
5 o'clock.
Close to 5 as possible.